Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
You are an individual, but so is everybody else. That is a phrase that I have muttered more times than I care to admit on this very podcast. And my reasoning is pretty simple. I like to respect everybody's individuality, their sense of belief, their sense of purpose, and their sense of spirituality. In that regard, my next guest offers some fresh perspective and alternate insight on the origins of human history. He is the founder of portal2ascension.org. We talk vibration, meditation, and UFOs. I'm excited to welcome Neil Gaur to the podcast, and I think this is going to give us all something new to think about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. Joining me on the podcast today is somebody I just had the pleasure of meeting a few minutes ago, Neil Gaur from Portal to Ascension. How you doing, Neil?
It's doing so good, man. It's really nice to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise. And you told me, what did you just get done doing?
Well, I just got out of a sweat lodge, the Mezcal, I guess 20, 25 minutes ago. And I was in there for a couple of hours.
Wow. And you're in Mexico, right?
Yeah, I'm in Mexico right now. Been out of this year, I'm probably going to be here for around 5 months. I went back home to California for 2 weeks, but I was here for 2 months before that. I just came back down again a week ago, and I'm here for another 3 months.
So what brings you to Mexico?
Well, definitely because less restrictions than the rest of the world. Right, that's one thing. And then also I film ancient sites and do documentaries. And, over here is like paradise for ancient archaeological sites. I filmed around 6 mini 15-minute documentaries over the last few years. Plus, there's a super conscious community down here as well. So I get the opportunity to connect with them. I'm vegan, and they got probably some of the most amazing vegan food out of the whole entire country, even better than most places in the US. So it's many different things. And I work from home. I do online events, even though I do some live events. Might as well be in paradise while I'm doing it, And
I'm glad you touched on those things, because one of the phrases I heard thrown around whenever I was reading about you and I was listening to other podcasts that you've been on was, you're a large part of the conscious awakening movement. Mm-hmm. Why don't you introduce yourself to my listeners? And to be honest, you're the first guest of this kind on my show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So introduce yourself to my listeners and kind of give your origin story.
All right, but I'm curious, what kind of guests do you normally have?
Oh, man, I've had UFC fighters. I've had professional musicians like Steve Ewing from The Urge has done my show. Doctors, psychiatrists. I had a little bit of everybody. So I'm really been excited about having you on the show.
Thanks, man. Okay, so I'll give my origin story. It goes back basically, I was born in England. I moved to the US when I was 12 years old, and I was born into a Hindu family. So I did all the rites and rituals, Hindu, straight out of India. And my parents actually moved from India to England when they were around 10 or 12, but definitely very religious and a lot of rites and rituals. And I did pretty much all of that as a kid growing up as well. I just followed what I was told. And I didn't really have any concept of thinking about God or what creation or what my purpose on earth was. And when I moved to the US, I was in Orange County, California. And then as I started getting older, I started writing poetry when I was 16 years old. And my poetry was really cosmic, kind of sci-fi, but more, I would say it's more real than fiction. It's kind of sci nonfiction, when I realized later what I was writing. And when I went to college at 18, I started, meeting people from all over the world and experimenting with different types of musics and pieces of information and beyond that. And as I was doing that, I started being very curious about my own religion, and I wanted to find the root of all religion because I didn't really have any firm belief. So my first thought at age 18, year 2000, was what is the root of all religion? Where did everything come from? And as I was researching this, I came across the Sumerian tablets of creation. And this is 2001. At the same time, I was writing a lot of poetry about cosmos, space, the universe, different planets, black holes. And when I came across these tablets of creation, there were a few individuals I ran across at the same time. Nassim Haramein is one of them, Jordan Maxwell, and William Henry. With their information that they were sharing, I was having a whole new insight on our ancient history that was transcending the timeline that we've been conventionally told. And at the same time, I was delving deep into the Sumerian scriptures. And in the Sumerian tablets, I started seeing things like this, for example. There was a two-scale image of our solar system with all the planets in the right place, but these scriptures date back like 6,000 years. So this started piquing my curiosity because through history, I've been told that we're the most advanced we've ever been. But then why is it that these ancient cultures had some advanced knowledge of our solar system without the technology that we have, telescopes and beyond? There was another story, the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh in the Sumerian scriptures is the original flood story. And then I started finding out that almost every civilization in the world had their own flood story that's almost the exact same story as Noah's flood. But it goes back to the Sumerian scriptures and probably even beyond that of this guy called Gilgamesh, who was a hybrid being living on this earth. So to me, I started realizing that I was delving into some origin stories of humanity, but the origin stories of humanity were far more cosmic than what we've been told. You know, like Noah's flood, just a regular human. But that story actually came from text that was talking about this being a hybrid being. And it even mentioned what planet this individual was from, which is a planet called Nibiru, which was the 10th planet in our solar system. So that was like all outlined in the text. As I was going through this, I started going through other scriptures as well, the Christian Bible, the Old Testament, the Quran, my own text, and I would be highlighting areas that was similar. And pretty soon I realized that so many of these religions have so many things in common. So why is it that we're going around all day saying my way is the only way, and that this and that basically we have so many differences when we look really at it and just do a little bit of research, we can realize that we all came from one source, right? So that kind of started my whole journey on this, down a rabbit hole from 2000 and 2006. I went deep into this information, researching. I even got really deep into the bloodlines and conspiracy theories and the fact that we've been controlled and the agendas of the elite. So by 2006, I was like fully into this, understanding quantum physics, how it connected to spirituality and all that. But I was really in fear as well. I was like, I felt that, we had been betrayed, lied to, that we lived on a prison planet until 2008 when I lost my job as a financial advisor because the market crashed and, we got laid off. And in that same year, I started performing poetry at an open mic because I performed spoken word. And when I was at this open mic, somebody was up on stage, started singing this song called My Name is Love. And as he was singing this song, like I had this epiphany that I was into all this spirituality, into like the understanding of consciousness, and they were all interconnected, that we're all one, and even attempting to go through the avenue of mathematics and quantum physics to prove our oneness. But at the same time, I really felt heavy and I didn't feel like liberated from this information. So in that moment when he was singing that song on stage, I shifted and realized that all of this that is happening right now is happening the way it's meant to be. And even though it's happening the way it's meant to be, doesn't mean that I can't take informed action and still work to better humanity. And that's the same year Portal to Ascension was born. And that's kind of just a quick summary of up until 2008. And then in 2008, I created Portal to Ascension. 2 years prior, in 2006, it was an online group. Tens of thousands of people had joined. And by 2008, I had like 5 different groups. So I started creating my first event. And then it's just been, nonstop evolution since then.
Part of what you're talking about is actually merging spirituality with science, merging theology with science, and getting an in-depth understanding of theology's place in our existence, as well as science's place in our existence. Because one of the things that I tell a lot of people, science explains the how, theology typically explains the why. What would you say? You said in 2008, you listened to this person sing and you had somewhat of an awakening. So that's what kind of brought you peace to the information that you had?
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of like, it was definitely an evolution of me realizing the whole concept, this everything happens for a reason, right? This is
Yes.
where that concept comes from. It's the fact that we actually chose to come down to this earth and experience this. And we came to this planet with amnesia deliberately in order to remember who we truly are. And so just because of that, everything that takes place happens the way it's supposed to happen to give us the experience we need so that we can regain remembrance of our connection to the source of the divine. So I understood that concept. People have said it a lot, but I never implemented it in my life. And I felt at one point, I felt it was kind of spiritually bypassing by even accepting that. But when I got to the point where I still, take action to better myself and better others, but realizing that everything is definitely the way it should be. And sure. That goes to like one of my, like if somebody says to me, what's the meaning to life? To me, it would be to experience that source from all of my research and my spiritual, practices and plant medicine and meditation. It's like source, the original consciousness wanted to experience itself infinitely. That's why there's parallel realities, parallel dimensions. Everything that could ever happen is happening now because time is just a construct and linear time is really an illusion. Ultimately, all realities and all frequencies and all dimensions are coexisting. And because that's the case, what we're doing is we're literally experiencing ourselves infinitely. So if source wanted to experience itself infinitely, then there is no real good or bad in the eyes of source or consciousness. There's only good and bad in this reality that we've created duality where we have good, bad, light, dark. But what is source? What is God? God is singularity. Singularity doesn't have a division, So when I started understanding that even the darkness and even the elite and even the people doing all this stuff to me are still playing the role that they're supposed to play, I stopped judging others and started focusing on my own spiritual journey. And it became less of an external trying to change things externally. And I started focusing on changing myself internally, which paradoxically helped me start doing more of these events and helping others.
In light of all of this, how would you say, even in pop culture in recent years, some of this information has transcended itself where the science fact and the science fiction, what you're describing is a blurred line. It's not completely linear to like a typical layman like myself, right? So it's like, if somebody that was a total skeptic came up to you, how would you explain this process to said skeptic?
Yeah, and that's why I love going into vibration and frequency, because when I started looking at the Sumerian scriptures, I started realizing that there was all these components that had to do with black holes and vibratory awareness. And then I started looking at the religion I was raised in from a different aspect as well, from science, and realized that yoga, meditation, chanting is all vibration and frequency. So it really does come down to a quantum world. And just to kind of make it overly simplified, I'm going to throw out arbitrary numbers just to kind of prove my point here. But let's say that we exist in the fourth dimension being time. We have three dimensions. We have length, width, and height. And then the fourth dimension is an object lodged within that. That's the fourth dimension. Let's say that first dimension is 0 to 100. Then we got 100 to 200 hertz, right? Hertz frequency, because that's how we measure it. Then we got 300, 400, and so on and so forth. We understand that we can only see, perceive, hear, smell a limited frequency range. We already know that. So we have already proven that our bodies are able to process a certain bandwidth of frequency, and we've proven that frequencies exist outside that range, right? So there are things out there, right? It's spirits, entities, consciousness, extraterrestrials that can literally vibrate at a frequency that is beyond our perceived reality. So why is it that when people do things like plant medicine, when they go to certain meditative states, they start seeing a reality that they can't see when they're in their normal frequency range? Is because through our own vibration, right? Through our shifting our own frequency, we're able to get to a reality where we can perceive other things. And that's kind of what this whole evolution of consciousness is that we've been within these fourth dimensions. A lot of people throw out the term the fifth dimension. And what happens, and this is also mainstream science, what happens in the fifth dimension is the next point of dimension is another point in time. So right now you have 2 dimensions of space and 2 dimensions of time within the fourth dimension. You have the fifth dimension, you have 3 dimensions of time, you have 2 dimensions of space. When you have 3 dimensions of time, it's no longer 2 dimensions, which is a beginning and an end. You have a third point, and time becomes more fluid. And that is kind of the reality. That's just the beginning of it all. But the way I really explain it to people is through vibration and frequency. And we actually utilize frequencies like ultrasound, many other types of vibration and frequencies, radio waves, frequencies that we can't even perceive, we're able to utilize. So why would we stop and not realize that there could be other frequencies that we aren't able to consciously perceive, but maybe eventually in our future, we might be able to get to that reality.
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to digest. That's a really, really good explanation. You're kind of explaining our existence as terrestrial beings to this planet, but what you're also explaining is that maybe our origins are not of this plane, right?
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of this is based on the ancient Sumerian text and as you described earlier, the consistencies across several different religions and such.
Yeah.
What do you suppose, going to that fact, has escalated all the information that's come out in recent years about being
UFOs?
Yes. UFOs, potential beings from other planets. The David Fravor story, the Bob Lazar story, all of that stuff. What do you think has escalated that in recent years?
All right. So first of all, we've been visited for a long, long time, probably since the beginning of humans on Earth, especially if we were actually seeded from extraterrestrials. There's documentation of UFO sightings that date back even to the late 1800s in Texas, where there was a news article in which they found an ET body and they buried it and gave it a Christian birth. And this was like 1897 or something like that in Texas. So we have these documentations. Now, the reason why that this is coming out is because it's pretty much inevitable at this point, because there's a lot of people like myself and many people I work with, because whistleblowers come onto my platform and release a lot of information in the past, that it's been a constant push to release this awareness. So it's a matter of time, really, before it was going to get out. What the government or the elite or the 3-letter agencies want to do is they wanted to get ahead of it before it came out in a way that they didn't have control over. So they kickstarted this DRIP disclosure program, DRIP disclosure. Ultimately, they've been lying to us since 1947. However, there probably were some things that happened before that. And there was actually a sighting, a crash landing in San Antonio, New Mexico in 1945 that was completely covered up. And Roswell was given attention, even though there was one 2 years before that. And I've gone there and interviewed the people that were actually on, like, they were kids at the time. He was like 10 years old. We interviewed them about the sighting and everything. So fast forward till now, with all this pressure to release this information, and including high-level celebrities and people that are like Robert Bigelow, for example, that is head of the one of the largest defense contractors in the entire world, having such an interest in this information that the government wanted to really get behind it and change the narrative around it. So for a long time, for decades, they ridiculed you if you spoke about this. If anything came on TV, let's say 10 years ago, they'd put the sound like do-do-do-do-do-do-do in the background. There'd be like one of the news anchors would probably dress up as a green alien and they would make fun about it. This was all actually contrived and deliberately done. And there's actually government documents on the CIA's website where you can look at what they did with Project Mockingbird in order to basically make it that there were certain news anchors that were full-time CIA agents that were pushing the narrative for the CIA. And part of that was also the UFO thing that lasted for a few decades. And then all of a sudden they decided to shift this. And this was about 7 or 8 years ago with, and one of the first things that happened was Hillary Clinton coming on Jimmy Kimmel show and having this whole entire setup thing where they Jimmy Kimmel and her, they're always, especially when a presidential candidate comes on, it's all already like decided and discussed beforehand. And then he goes, will you go ahead and open the UFO files again and look at Area 51 files? And she goes that, well, Jimmy, we need to reword this. This is something else now. We don't call it UFO anymore. We call it UAP. That was the introduction of the term UAP. What they were doing is they were trying to rebrand because they themselves had ridiculed the word UFO, so they were attempting to rebrand it UAP. Then all of a sudden, we find out within the last 4 years that they had this ATIP program in which they spent $17 million over multiple years researching UFOs. So all of this stuff started coming out. Lou Elizondo came out, and even though the jury for me is still out with Lou Elizondo, a lot of people within this community feel that he is a genuine whistleblower that is going against the narrative of the three-letter agencies. But then some people think that he's completely in alignment with them. One of the reasons would be when he disclosed all this stuff was like 3 days after he left the agency. And that's what they do is like, you can't talk about this while you're in the agency, but the fact that you leave a few days before it goes to show that you might actually be in bed with the agency, and they're doing this deliberately in order to come up with like, they want to play both sides basically. So I'm going all over the place, but hopefully you're getting me.
No,
here.
I'm getting it. I love it.
All right. And then, so more and more information came out. They said they're going to come out with more stuff. Tom DeLonge from Blink 182 came out and did a live stream around that. He's the one who introduced Lou Elizondo. This was like 6 years ago, right after Hillary, I think. And he did a live stream from his Twitter page where he had all these people, ex-NASA people, ex-whatever, CIA, all this stuff, defense contractors. Coincidentally, all of them left their jobs in these places within the last week, right? And they were all basically saying that this is a reality. These are things that we've seen. Now we're going to try to find out what technology they're using. Completely overlooked the one thing that was the most important thing, which was, who are these people driving these UFOs, right? Went straight to the technology and said, we're going to come out with an app and a media company to entertain you about this information, inform you about it, and come up with an app so the regular citizen can see a sighting and triangulate it and report it to the Stars Academy so that they can go ahead and basically, track all these UFOs. Then all of a sudden, Tom DeLonge gets pushed out of the way. And around 4 years ago, you see Tom DeLonge doing things on the side, but what's his name? James Corbell?
Jeremy Corbell.
Yeah, Jeremy Corbell. I'm like trying to look at my phone, but Jeremy Corbell becomes the frontman instead of Tom DeLonge. So now this is why they use both of those guys. Why do you think they use two older dudes that connect with younger people, right? That was the face of the UFO movement that can speak in a way, kind of like how Obama was like kind of like that too,
Right.
How they created, or they had some dude that can connect with the youth to get those people riled up again. So they deliberately put these people there that are literally just the front men for this as the face, while all these things are happening in the background. And now it's been shifted to Corbell and coming out with more stuff, but it's all the same recycled footage, right? And I'll just add one more thing to it, is that they did the UFO report, right? The UAP report that came out last year. And this UAP report, all of us were waiting for, so excited about it. And then they came out with I think it was like 10 pages, but then there was 100 pages that only Congress got to see. And there was only I think it was 119 sightings that they reported, making the world who saw it think that, only 119 sightings had been seen. But what they didn't realize is in the small print, it literally only was the amount of sightings from one program for a certain amount of months. So not going back all the way to the 40s, and then the invent of Project Blue Book in the 50s, which was the real program that went around and actually interviewed these people that were having these experiences and created documents. And I'll just add one more thing to it, and then you can chime in. If you type in UFO CIA, UFO NSA, UFO FBI on the internet, you'll go directly to their own vaults. Go through some of their stuff there, and mind is going to explode. For example, on the FBI's website, there is a sighting from 1958, right? Not even a sighting, an actual interaction with the UFO craft in 1958, 1959, something like that, in which in upstate New York, some military person came across this craft with writing that was completely never before seen on Earth, and had this metal where they would put their hand over it and different things would happen to it, something out of a sci-fi movie. So it's all out there. It's really just up to us now to utilize this information in a way and get it out to more people, but they want to have control over it. And part of the control has also unfortunately been militarized, which is telling us that these craft, why is it that the military is really, really interested in this, right? The reason why is twofold, is that they see technology they can utilize for themselves, right? And then also they are where do you think the majority of UFO sightings are? At nuclear bases. Right. You type in nuclear bases UFOs on the internet, you're going to get so many results. And then you go to the experiences, and then you find out the reason why they're doing that is they're trying to stop us from blowing ourselves up. But the military is kind of like scared that they might be actually trying to do something else.
Yeah, I've actually heard that. I wish I could remember which documentary it was, but I caught that very same exact thing, is why the phenomenon was happening over nuclear power plants and nuclear bases. Since the David Fravor report came out, and, you know, going to the militarized narrative right now, it seems like since that happened, there has been a lot more sightings on the West Coast of the United States. What I found kind of odd is when I was doing my research, the social media algorithms all of a sudden started feeding me videos of sightings in California in particular. And it seems like there is a huge upswing of these sightings.
Yeah.
Like really within the past 6 to 8 months, it's really ticked up. Why?
All right. Well, we've been talking about really nuts and bolts grounded information here, but if you want, we're going to go spiritual right now, if that's cool with you.
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm good.
All right. So, well, first of all, there's something called the galactic quarantine, right? That many ancient scriptures actually talked about, even the Sumerian scriptures, and a lot of experiencers and other individuals have spoke about it as well, in which Earth was quarantined from the extraterrestrial community for quite some time. The whole 2012 shift with the Maya prophecy also represented, for a lot of ancient cultures, was the end of galactic quarantine, in which we're open to have open communication, interaction with them. In our near future, we're definitely going to have some like open contact. It might start with small groups. Some people have said to me that, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Well, if you look at our governments and the way that the governments act and how brutal they are and warlike they are, why would you choose to interact with a government? They're actually, and this gets back to vibration and frequency, the reason why we can't perceive these beings and interact with them on a constant basis is because they vibrate at a frequency that we're not quite at. And you might say that it's a higher dimensional frequency, but that higher dimensional frequency is a more harmonious one that is actually spiritual vibration. So as we shift and we, I don't like to say raise our frequency, because it's not about an actual higher number. It's a harmonious frequency. As we become more of a harmonious civilization, compassionate civilization, we're going to have open contact with them. However, there are certain things at play on the earth right now, and they're taking an active role in assisting us. One of which is that they will not allow us to destroy ourselves, that there is an invested interest in Earth. And this goes into galactic origins, where some people have said, even including whistleblowers from the government, that many different alien species have donated DNA to Earth in the past. And we're not just like seeded by one extraterrestrial civilization, but we are actually a galactic library of many different beings, and they have direct ancestry to us. So they're here right now to interact with us and waiting for us to meet them halfway. And I'll just add you, because I like to add grounded information to it. I'll just tell you about the Israeli space chief, the dude that I think his name is Avi Loeb or something like that, Aviloeb. A couple of years ago, he came out and he said, so this guy is the guy that founded the Israeli space program, right? And he said that there is a galactic federation out there and they want to interact with us, but they said that humanity is not at the level in order to basically have that that interaction yet. And when I saw that and read into what he was talking about, he was basically saying that our consciousness level isn't at a level where we could actually accept and be open to it, but they're out there and they've been interacting. And he even said they're on Earth right now, right? And when this went on New York Times too, it became really mainstream because of all this UFO stuff coming out. And then when they tried to ridicule him over here in the US, they started asking his peers, like government officials and politicians in Israel, about him. And they said that, well, he's a very intellectual, smart person. If he said it's real, we got to look into it. Instead of doing the opposite of what they would do here, is try to discredit you and make you like lose your job. Over there, they're like, whoa, why would someone so intellectual that literally, well, why would he say something like this, right? So the reason why there's more sightings right now is because we're going to get to a point eventually where there's going to be open contact. The Earth's frequency of shifting. Not only is the solar system rotating basically up and below the photon belt of our galaxy, but we're also spinning around our galaxy as well. When we go to certain places within our galaxy, there's different energy levels, different types of radiation and frequencies. Some ancient scriptures, including the Sumerians and the Maya, speak about a position of the galaxy that we get into with a very high concentration of ether, which is an element that causes a lot of shifts vibrationally for everybody on the planet. So there are many different factors contributing to this right now. End of quarantine, the position of our galaxy, the fact that these extraterrestrials have been visiting us for so long, that more and more people are being open to the fact that there could be life out there, right? So with that, I feel that they're making themselves more known.
Recently, I also read that the galaxy that we exist in, and actually the system of galaxies, research is starting to show more and more frequently that it's more mapped out like a neural network, like our neural network is in our minds. Do you think that has any sort of symbolism or linkage to part of the spirituality part that you're speaking of?
Yeah, I feel like I did a whole presentation called Galactic Origins in the Milky Way Galaxy, and it was a 3-hour, and out of those 3 hours, I spent a good hour going into the dynamics of the Milky Way and how incredibly diverse and beautiful it is, and all the different things that are occurring in regards to the interaction with different planets and star systems, and how, like, we're moving at such a fast pace through our galaxy, but there are actually certain stars in different parts of the galaxy that are literally like connected to us, moving at the same speed at the same place, that even though we're going through space, we're seeing the exact same distance, right? And there's actually a galaxy that is combining with us right now. It's called the Sagittarius A galaxy, that has been combining with us for the last 17 billion years, but at this point is literally like creating an infinity symbol around a galaxy. So there's a lot going on, and the neural network thing, for sure, everything is way more intricate and connected and random. Like, the more I realize all this stuff, the less I realize that things are random, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel that it's definitely something going on with that.
Dude, this is fascinating. I am loving this, dude. So let's talk about your platform. Let's talk about portal2ascension.org. That is your website. If you're listening to this right now, please check out portal2ascension.org. Learn a little bit more about Neil and some of the speakers that he has at his conventions. Let's talk about that a little bit.
All right, yes. So I started in 2006, going back to the story, I started an online group called 2012 Consciousness, Mind, Evolution, and Presence. I wanted to find out more and meet people who are into this stuff. In 2008, I had a dream to change the name to Portal to Ascension, and I started with small meditation events, sound healing events, all-day Ancient Alien conferences as well. I've worked with most people from the show Ancient Aliens. I've done conferences and retreats and stuff for them. And so I started getting really into just creating events and producing them. I did a few international tours. But then fast forward until 2015, I decided to stop doing live events, full time, and cultivate an online university, in which we started with one webinar a month. And now at this point, for the last 3 years, we've been at around 110 events a year, where we explore a range of conscious topics, from nutrition to how to release heavy metals from your body, to extraterrestrials, to UFOs, nuts and bolts, to the spiritual galactic origins. And about 40% of our conferences and workshops have an ancient history component, where we dive deep into our ancient history, ancient civilizations, but prehistory, before the history books, and try to piece back our conventional timeline, try to shift our conventional timeline to what might be real. Because what's happened is history has been written and rewritten by the victors, even as much as last year, like it continues to happen. But there are so much evidence out there, archaeological evidence, spiritual texts, that really can, especially archaeological evidence, that really throws off what we've been conventionally told. So on our platform, we go through all of this information. Anything that I have the opportunity to think about, I want to explore, we do an event on. For example, not only do we have those 110 events a year, but this year I'm also doing a different ancient civilization per month. So we're doing an all-day conference on a different ancient civilization. We did the Maya a couple months ago. We're doing the Sumerians, which is really a cornerstone of this info in February. We're doing ancient India, South America, So that's just one aspect of it all. Then we have around 6 or 7 annual conferences that are online. And then another, the rest of them are like 80 new events every single year. And I've cultivated at this point around 10,000 hours of presentations on every topic under the sun I could think of. And our website is kind of like a Netflix for consciousness. So not only if anybody signs up on our website, portaltoascension.org, you get 3,000 hours of free presentations, and I add like 20 hours per month, or you can just sign up for any single event and you get to view those events that are coming up for the year. The intention for what we do, the bottom line of it all, is to empower humanity to remember who they really are. And through that, we do a lot of things with spirituality, where we're teaching people tools and techniques. And then we also go very esoteric. We're extremely esoteric with our information. And even when we know about our ancient history, what did our ancients know? What can we learn from that? How can we implement it now? Even if we can't, is nothing you can practically implement. Just the fact that you know your true identity and your true history, rather than what you've been told by your governments, right, is a whole new ballgame in life. So those are kind of some of the things that we explore. We have like a eventual goal. We keep growing and also do live conferences. We have an annual conference called the Portal to Ascension Conference in San Diego, California. That's going to be in October. And then we also do tours. We're a white labeled production service for consciousness. So some people hire us to do international tours with them, authors, speakers, things like that.
That is fantastic that you use ancient history in tandem with the message that you're trying to spread. No, this is going to kind of sound like a repeat question, but it's not. How, with all of this knowledge that you have, how do you handle the skeptics? Like, you've got a really good, because I know you have to face skeptics, right? Like, yeah. You've got a really good education base here. You've aligned it with history, but how do you keep somebody from saying, well, this kind of sounds like some Heaven's Gate shit, Like, how do you prevent that?
When I first started doing this, like when I first started doing the online university, and I went to a whole other level of awareness of what we're doing, so the 2014, 2015, I would get more of those kind of skeptical people and really hateful people even that would send emails and stuff. And, sometimes I was, I'm a very sensitive person, so I'd get triggered and respond, triggered, but whole essays explaining things to try to like get them on understanding, right? I would say over half those people responded apologizing to me.
That's
because
awesome.
I literally broke it down to a point where, actually more than half, I broke it down so much that even when people said, why do you charge money for spiritual events? Even that, like I used to get, right? And I'm like, if I didn't do that, I would be doing something else and someone wouldn't be putting this information out, So, and our business model is 70% of our proceeds go to the speakers. So we're one of the largest conscious platforms in the world that are actually contributing to free energy device technology, people researching quantum physics and spirituality, going to archaeological sites, things like that. But to get back to your point, that nowadays I'm so busy with the business that I don't get as many people doing that. But when I do get, every now and then, I kind of gauge where that person's at, because sometimes it's just a fundamental Christian, for example, might be reaching out to me and saying Jesus is the only way. I'm not going to engage in that kind of conversation because it's really nonsensical. But what I've kind of really loved about what we do is, and I was saying this in the first few years, 2008 to 2011, it was almost like my mantra, is I'm not here to preach the choir. I'm here to inform the linear-minded people, right? People think linearly, which is the people that can't accept what I'm saying here, that this is a reality. And part of that is diving into ancient scriptures, looking at archaeological studies, looking at DNA results from Homo species that lived on the planet the same as us, that completely throws off the fact that, we evolved separately, and that's a whole other conversation there, because I'm talking about Paracas people and the Longitus skull people, and how they were the kings and the queens, and the Incas at one point were the commoners within this community in Paracas, right? And then the quantum physics element, right? And quantum physics in general, the conventional study of it all, has kind of been has an agenda behind it. But when I'm talking about the quantum world and the fact that you and I have vibration and we're not solid matter, this computer, this microphone is literally vibrating frequency. And we've proven that the frequency vibrates in and out of our perceivable reality, right? It's not just a frequency vibrating. It literally shifts phases in and out. That's just like a hologram, right? So within that, therein lies the illusion. That's what I say. That right there makes us realize that everything that we think is real actually has another component to it that we haven't quite understood yet. And from that, all we're doing is exploring these realities. So I've had conversations with people many times, and part of when you asked me how do I explain this to someone, that was like a small way of explaining something that I would take much longer to communicate to someone, right? In order to get them to understand what I'm doing. And I really haven't had that much pushback. I feel most people understand it. Well, and especially because we do some events that, like, if you don't know who we are, and even if you're into this stuff, and then you come to one of our events and then you just see the title of it, some people get taken aback, like, what the heck is this? Right. And if they take the time to ask me, then I'll take the time to send them other videos that give them supporting evidence to why we did this in the first place.
Sure. And, open-minded people are not going to be slinging the haterade anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so what's on Neil's agenda for the rest of the week?
Dude, all right. So I've been on a road trip in the Yucatan for the last few days with my friend down here. And so I went to like all over the peninsula, and now we're in Tulum, back to Playa del Carmen in a couple of days. I'm staying down here for another 2.5 months, and pretty much I'm going to be doing a lot of filming of ancient sites, performing poetry and spoken word, because that's my true passion, and creating events. I've automated around 8 months of events on my website. So if you go to portaltoascension.org and you go and take a look at the online event section, there's like a huge amount of epic awareness coming up. So I'm going to be focusing on interviewing many of the people. And that's the other thing that I want to plug here, is our YouTube channel is going pretty big. And I interview a lot of people on there. We do live panels on there, all types of topics. And that is kind of just plus what I've been doing is actually, since I have so much footage in the archives, I'm releasing it all on my YouTube. And every single day we have a new thing going out there. So just fully immersed in this, and also fully immersed in my own healing process. I'm just like, I have a lot of inner work to do myself. I've been going through a lot of shifts and changes in my life in the last year. So as I'm doing Portal to Ascension, I'm in what I feel is paradise. And I'm just going to be focusing on like feeding my own soul. That's what's up for me, man.
That's awesome. Sir, thank you for blessing my show with your presence. This has been fascinating. Let's stay in touch. I would love to have you on again sometime.
All right. Yeah, I'm down.
Once again, I'd like to thank Neil for being on the show today. You can find him at www.portaltoascension.org. And hey, while you're doing your web surfing, make sure you go to www.caughtonthemic.com. Make sure you give me a follow on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And now you can find all episodes on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and do a search of Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. As always, I appreciate those 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcast app. And now you can also leave me a review on Spotify. Just look for the place where you got to give the stars, and make sure you give me 5 of them. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.